Hey, it looks like we're live, everyone. Thanks for coming. If you get a chance, why don't you type in the live chat? That'll be to the right of our window of our video, where you're coming from.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
It takes us about at least 10 seconds to see comments, I think. So if we seem like we're not responding, we will.
It actually shows like 9 people waiting.
It actually. All right, we're getting feedback. Is that you, Shanda? Okay. Alrighty. So, do you think we should? It looks like we have 9 viewers. Oh, hey, John. I see your message. Thanks.
Hi, John.
Thanks for letting us know someone's out there. All right. So, why don't we get started? Hi, Nancy from Virginia. Thanks for logging in. We're going to be talking tonight on photographing in winter because we have an upcoming Winter Women's Photo Conference in February that we'll talk about at the end, but we thought we would share our passion for winter and why we decided to host a conference in the winter. So, Shanda, why don't you start?
Oh, all right. I'm Shanda Akin, and I am from Durango, Colorado. I'm a full-time photographer. I was in the Air Force for 25 years before retiring and being able to do this wonderful thing that I love. I am currently a student at the Academy of Art University studying my master's degree in photography, and super glad to be here today. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, and I'm Jeanie Sumrall-Ajero. I've dabbled in various creative pursuits my entire life, so I tend to think of my camera as a creative tool. And even though I've taken photos from as early as I can remember, I have some really bad black and white photos taken with maybe a brownie camera. I really would say that I got serious about my photography as a creative pursuit in 2017. And I find most of my inspiration in nature, although I do like to do some studio work. And I live in Fort Collins, Colorado. I've lived here for 36 years. And yes, I'm getting super excited about winter coming. Martha?
Hey, guys. My name is Martha. I was born and raised in Mexico City. I relocated to the United States when I was in high school, and I lived in Northern California for several years before I made Colorado my home. I have always had a deep passion for photography and the outdoors. I love backpacking and just adventuring outside. I'm a thrill seeker. I love taking risks and I love adventures. And I'm thrilled to now be pursuing photography as a full-time kind of job, I guess. I guess, maybe.
Yes.
So my primary focus is nature and landscape. I do dabble into like wildlife photography. It takes a lot of patience, which sometimes I don't have. I love meeting new people and connecting. And so I usually, when I go places, I try to look up who's around and connect with them. And I'm eager to share my passion with you guys and to put everybody and assist everybody in achieving their own photographic goals and adventures.
All right. So, in our webinar this evening, I should mention, and I meant to mention at the very beginning, this is our very first live webinar. So if there's a glitch, we'll do our best to correct it, but we are recording. And if things go south, we'll put up the recording. Okay, so winter photography. First, we're going to talk about the magic of winter and why we love photographing in winter and what makes it special. And then we're going to go through a bunch of different photography ideas. So things like grand vistas, small scenes, different lighting conditions, because there's a lot of different lighting conditions that you can run into just like any time of the year, but there's some special considerations in winter, especially when there's snow on the ground. And wildlife, because wildlife behaves differently, and also it can make a really simple background to really help the wildlife stand out when there's snow on the ground. Then we'll talk about some winter gear suggestions and talk about safety, because there are different safety considerations for sure. All right, Shanda.
All right. Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. Winter is truly a delightful it's a truly a delightful time, and it is has abundant photography opportunities. It is a wonderland, and it's one of my favorite. As a little bit of a thrill seeker and adventure nerd, I love being out in the snow. It's one of my favorite times of year to photograph of all of the years. It can be one of the most beautiful and rewarding seasons in photography. And although the season may be harsh to get out in it, it proves to be superbly magic. And all because of these tiny little molecules of water in varying forms. And we'll talk about those basically throughout the presentation. At other times of the year, in images such as the ones that you see on your screen now, at different times, you're going to have rocks, grasses, sticks, ponds, downed logs, dead flowers, all sorts of things that will create tension and chaos within a scene. And you see these two images. The upper right image is really a fall scene, which the color is obviously much different than the larger image, which is a fresh bed of snow and a little bit of low-lying clouds in the back that give it some real good mood. These features can be covered under a blanket of snow or really simplified in the scene in front of you that creates some isolation of subjects. It allows us to create simple and frugal compositions with less sharpening, and it opens a whole world of color from the monochromatic to magical alpenglow. It also causes us to look at those shapes and lines and the small details that allow your creativity to soar. So today, we will share a bundle of inspiring approaches, fresh creative insights, and unique perspectives on capturing stunning winter scenes. And I will start us off by talking about grand vistas. So for grand vistas, I typically use wide angle lens, and specifically these two images here that we'll talk about today. The image on the left, I was standing, so this is about eye level with a tripod with my wide angle lens. And you can see here that it captures everything from the little rocks in front with the fresh snow, including the V that takes you all the way up to the wonderful bridge in the middle. And then the image on the right is also with a wide angle, but it's a vertical image, and it's stacked. It's actually about 3 inches from the ice, so it's very, very close. It's a stack of 6 images so that we get that sharpness from all the way from the beginning to the peaks in the back. And if you'll notice, about 3/4 up, there is a transition between the ice and the snow. So oftentimes, to find some of these incredible shapes in the ice, you have to remove the snow if the wind hasn't already come and blown it off itself. And so this particular day, we had jackets, we had the scrapers from our car, gloves, anything we could find, wiping the snow away so that we could find these cracks, and they were everywhere. It was pretty awesome. This particular image was actually taken at Sprague Lake in Rocky Mountain National Park in February also. And last thing to note about it is the color. It does have kind of a magenta, reddish, pinkish color, and that is because on that particular morning, we had alpenglow. And so we're going to talk a little bit about this magical thing called alpenglow. Basically, alpenglow is when, the bottom minimum description is that it's basically reflected sunlight. So it's a scattering of sunlight due to a reflection on those molecule-sized particles that I described earlier. They're airborne precipitation or even ice crystals in the lower atmosphere. And some of those tiny pieces that get spread throughout the landscape creating that light or reflecting off of that light that I mentioned earlier. And as you'll see, the photograph that I talked about previously and these two photographs, the color that you're typically going to find is red to red violet. And now this occurs when the sun is below the horizon. So not when it's at the horizon, not over the horizon, it's when it's below the horizon. And often people get confused with the sunset or sunrise when the sunlight peaks just enough over the horizon to actually put light on the mountains. So this is a little bit different, not to be confused, but it often is. And it is the colors that I mentioned. This occurs here in Colorado. It is pretty special. So if you look at the weather when you're getting ready to photograph winter and you see that it's supposed to be nothing but blue skies, don't be discouraged, because this is often when you might find this phenomenon called an alpenglow. Okay, so the image on the right is a panorama.
Sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. It's a panorama, so we're going to move right into panoramas.
Oh, there we go.
Perfect.
Sorry.
So another opportunity when we're talking about grand landscapes is panoramas. And these can include, some of the lower, trees and maybe some of the things at the bottom of the scene, but it often is going to include mountains in this case, since we're talking about winter scenes in the mountains. And both of the panoramas that you see here were taken with a longer lens. So when I do panoramas, I'll often pull out my mid-range or my long-range lens. And these were with my 70 to 200. And so I clipped in all the way to 200 millimeters, and I created 3 images for each one of these panoramas. And then I stitched them together in Photoshop later. So this is one of the wonderful ways that you can get out and photograph grand panoramas or grand landscapes by creating panoramas. Okay, so next. Finally, black and white images. The conditions are often optimal for creating black and white images in wintertime. This allows you to stay out longer and shoot, or to go back out during times where you wouldn't consider in other seasons because of a variety of things. Winter often brings clouds, so you're going to get a lot of the storms coming in and out, the cloudiness coming in and out. And if you look at image D, you can see some really interesting clouds in the top there. The light itself wasn't, overly fantastic when it was a color image, but the clouds were just really incredible. And this was in the middle of the afternoon. And then wind. So wind will a lot of times blow at the top of the peaks. So if you take a look at the panorama in A, every single one of the peaks has wind blowing off, and the light, this is actually a beautiful, colorful image. But it does also make a great black and white image because of the moodiness that you see in that image. And then the bottom middle image that is Martha's, we had a wonderful windy afternoon that just lit up these mountains. And this was one of the canyons that just blew the snow around in between the trees. And it was just so moody, so beautiful. And it created this, Martha was able to get this fantastic image. So black and white will often, it'll give a special construct and compositional elements such as negative space, texture, scale, proportion, and perspective that will allow you different opportunities than other times of day. And the opportunities are endless. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right, so moving on to small scenes. What I found interesting when we were putting this presentation together and gathering all of our photos is that I had none of the Grand Scenics. So I think some of that is that I'm not usually in a place where to get up early and go get the Grand Scenics, although that could just be an excuse. It could just be that I don't like getting up super early when it's really cold out. So we'll see this winter whether I can. That's a goal for me, is to try to get some more Grand Scenics, because that's not in my wheelhouse, and so that would be a good challenge. But what is in my wheelhouse is the small scenes, because I live in an area that does get snow, although down here on the Front Range, we get a snowstorm and then it all melts. So it doesn't stick around for forever. And unless we get like a couple feet of snow, it hardly ever turns that, it doesn't ever look sooty or anything like that. So it's more get out while I can, and I definitely do. So we're going to talk about ice abstracts and trees in winter, frozen waterfalls, which are really special when you can find them, hoarfrost, patterns in the snow, and ice sculptures. So I'll be describing what all of those are. And we're going to start with trees in winter. So one of the things that I love about snow on trees in winter is that it really helps accentuate the lines of the tree. When the leaves are on the tree in summer, you don't really get to see the structure as well. And even in winter, you can if you have like a foggy day, but the layer of snow just adds dimension to it that you don't get anywhere else. And so in the image B in the middle and the top, that was taken in my area. I live kind of in a valley, and so there's hills on to the west and there's hills to the east. And so on sunrise and sunset, I get a lot of situations where I can get a tree in sun, but it hasn't yet hit the hillside, so it's dark behind it. And that's how the lighting happened in this particular instance. And then in the image below that, image E, I just wanted to point out there's no snow in that image. There's certainly fog, but I just wanted to point out that sometimes the color of winter foliage is absolutely beautiful. So this red color that you see on the bottom, that's all willows in winter. And I don't know if willows turn red in all parts of the country, but the bark of willows in this area definitely turns red and adds quite a pop of color to your images. And then of course the fog or snow acts the same way if it's actively snowing, really adds a layer of depth into your images. So do either of you have something to add to this?
I was going to say, like on the image that it's F image. So you can have like really cool compositions with snow and how like the branches and in this case the roots gonna flare up and the snow acts as like as a highlighter. So that tree just always pulls my attention, but with the snow, it adds to the drama kind of thing. So you just gotta be on the lookout for just like that.
And then blowing snow. So the images to the left, A and D, very different trees. So they're pine trees and cottonwood trees, but blowing snow. So the blowing snow causes the background to be blurred. And so it really accentuates the trees that are in front. And sometimes completely hides the background like it does in image A.
Actually, I was gonna say too, like that image C, that's like those trees are called like snow ghosts. That usually happens where the snow, there's like more water content in the snow, so that they attach to the trees and they create this really cool. They call them snow ghosts, I guess, like a ghost. But I know they're typical in Finland. They're in Montana. We don't get that much that here, but it's super cool if you can find those.
Cool. Okay, hoarfrost and rime ice. So, not that it makes any difference to your photos, but if you're wondering what the difference is, rime ice forms in foggy or cloudy conditions. And so it's essentially when water droplets in the air freeze onto cold surfaces. But hoarfrost forms in completely clear air. And what is fascinating to me is that the crystals freeze directly on from a vapor state into a frozen crystal. It doesn't pass through the liquid phase at all. And before doing this presentation, I don't think I realized the difference between those two. So I think most of my photos are actually rime ice because I actively look for when the dew point is equal to the temperature and it's below freezing. And I look at the forecast the night before and try to predict when it's going to happen. But the fact that I'm looking for the dew point would tell me that most of my stuff is probably rime ice. That's when I get most excited. But it's only because I didn't know to look for hoarfrost. So anyway, photos on the right, you can see in photo number letter F on the lower right there, that is ponderosa pine needles. And it was a foggy morning and I went out and everything just looked crystally. So just like in photos B and D, where the trees are just completely covered with crystals, if you have the ability, if you ever see this in the morning, definitely get out. And in Colorado, you have to get out quickly because as soon as the sun comes up, it melts, it's gone. And so it's a very special time to be out and walking around, and it's just a magical, magical landscape. It's one of my favorite things. And then for the upper right, number C or letter C is a macro. So I like to get in close with a macro and really get to look at the crystals. So this is just a piece of dead grass that had amazing crystals on it. And I don't know whether this is hoarfrost or rime ice, but I really loved what it looked like because the crystals were just amazing. Either of you want to add anything?
I'll just add that the top left one, A, was in the morning. We took a hut trip out to a cabin. So we went out there we skied up to it for a few miles and we stayed a couple days out there. And this was in the morning and it was below zero. And
wow.
Because it was so cold, that's where this hoarfrost formed on all of the grass, basically everything sticking out of the snow. And then as the sun starts coming up, it was still, for quite a while, it was still actually cold enough to hold the ice on before it started melting, which is pretty rare, as you just heard Jeanie talking about. But every single blade of grass and everything that stuck up out of the snow was just covered in this beautiful frost.
Okay, ice abstracts, another one of my obsessions. I live near a reservoir and it does freeze, but it hardly ever freezes to the point that you can walk on it. But that means that along the edges, I can get some really interesting ice patterns because it goes through a freeze and thaw and freeze and thaw and freeze and thaw. Like every night it freezes and then during the day, the sun hits it and it thaws. And so you can get some really interesting patterns that way. And so letter E is definitely, that was one of those patterns that I found along the edge of the reservoir. That said, B, just above it, that was, I think that was a late November, early December hike up to Lake Hiaha in Rocky Mountain National Park. And it was blue ice. It had these bubbles in it. Some areas were crystal clear, and I could tell from some of the cracks it went through that it was at least 8 inches thick. But I have to say it was really disconcerting to be able to see all the way down to the bottom and just be standing on top of it. It was really fascinating. So if you ever get a chance to do that, it's really cool. We'll talk about ice safety in the safety section. But yeah, you can get really interesting reflections. So in picture C, I'm assuming, this is Martha's photo, that there was light shining on the ice, just like it can shine on water. You can get that same reflection in the ice. Or if it's not a direct light source, it could be a hillside that is in light, but then reflecting off the ice. And you can get some golden colors along with the blue ice, and that contrasting color scheme is really nice. And then
the photo was during sunset when we were at Rocky Mountain, actually, those two photos.
Cool.
So yeah, sunset was kind of like just lighting up.
Yeah. It's really fun to look at light and different colors of light reflecting in the ice, because even that can make some, just like in water, it can make some really interesting patterns in the ice as well. And then D and F, those are both and A actually are both, they're all flat lays. So it's looking straight down on the ice. And I find the light and the dark in image D, I find that fascinating. That's Shanda's image. And really good eye there, Shanda. It's a really cool image. And being able to find like a pine cone, that just adds a splash of color to an otherwise monochrome image, and that can really bring it to life as well.
She actually had it in her pocket. I saw her like pull it out and sprinkle it with
Blow
snow.
snow on it,
Uh-huh.
cover it up.
So just carry your pine cones.
I carry them around with me everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay, and I just wanted to encourage you not to get discouraged if all you see is brown mud around your ice, because that is exactly what I have. But what I see is blue. So I know that's possible to do. And the way that I process that is that I make it monochrome and then I just add a color tone to that. So as you probably know, with any monochrome image, and with any abstract image, to be honest, you have the ability to really push your processing a little bit more, because when it's abstract and black and white is a form of abstraction, then you don't have to worry about as much about reality. And so I love, just like I like seeing shapes in clouds, I look for the same sort of thing in ice patterns, and I find them really fascinating. So don't be afraid to be creative, and don't be discouraged if you don't have what you consider to be perfect conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Frozen waterfalls. Okay, so the water, picture B was taken when I was standing where I am to take picture A. So picture A was with my phone, and right, I think you can see my cursor. So right in about here is where I focused in with the long lens. I think 200 millimeters, so it didn't have to be too long. This is a really popular frozen waterfall for ice climbing. It's in the Wild Basin area of Rocky Mountain National Park, and it doesn't look like anything in the summer because all it is a trickle of water. But that means in the winter, the trickle of water keeps freezing and adding up and adding up and adding up, and you get these really amazing formations of the frozen falls. I would encourage you, if you decide to go here, to bring a bike helmet or something. You can see all the ice climbers themselves are wearing helmets, and that's because they're using ice picks, and there are pieces of ice that are just flying off, and you don't want to get hit with one of those in your head. That would be an instant injury. Would not be good. And then Shanda, do you want to talk about the other two there?
Oh, sure, yes. So C and D were actually taken at the same exact place and the same exact morning. And so this is an example of two completely different images that you can create in an environment like this. So this is a waterfall that's very popular. It's in the bottom of a canyon. And then in winter, it freezes and it looks like various different. It's different every year. This is also an area, like Jeanie mentioned, where off to the left of the canyon, there's a lot of ice climbing. And so there's even more icicles and some fun stuff to photograph. And this particular morning, I started with my wide angle. And so I photographed the whole hold of water, which often doesn't melt even through the winter because of the movement, the fast moving water. And so even though the tunnel or the waterfall itself will freeze, it creates a tunnel of water that comes out. And in this particular time, it had this little window that you see below in the bottom image, perfectly framing the waterfall and then the rock behind it. And so this is just two examples of some frozen waterfalls that you can get very different compositions.
Mm-hmm.
Patterns in snow. Okay, this is the best abstract fun.
More fun than ice? I don't know.
Oh man, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on where I am. If I have
Right.
ice, I'll take pictures of ice. If I have snow, because sometimes there can be ice and no snow on the ground.
Mhm.
So there's that.
Mhm.
And you can see that I've turned half of these into black and white, and half of them are in color. Again, I love the way that I can really push the contrast in a black and white in a way that if I left it in color, it would look very unnatural. So that tends to be why I'll do something like that. Picture C is actually completely out of focus, but the snow when right after a snow, so if it like snows overnight and I go out first thing in the morning, sometimes if there's really big crystals, they just reflect rainbow colors. And so I was seeing that, and threw my camera out of focus to make little bokeh sparkles, and that's how I created that image. Image F is just a really interesting pattern. It's like snow that came, maybe it was like old snow and new snow. I'm not even sure, but I just thought when I turned it black and white, it reminded me somewhat of a hillside on fire. We've just been through a couple wildfires in my area, so maybe that was on my mind when I was processing it. And image D is actually, it's a snowdrift, and the shadows are coming from, there was a hillside to the left, and it was probably 40 feet above my head, 40 feet high, and there was bushes on the very top, and the sun was just starting to rake over those bushes, and the bushes are what created all the striations of shadow on that. E is just snow on ice in a big lake, and I probably focus stacked that because I was taking that with a long lens. And A and B are, quote, just patterns in snow, but something that caught my eye and made me want to photograph it. Ice sculptures. So I mentioned that I live near a reservoir, and after walking the edges of the reservoir for a number of days, I started seeing that in the freeze and thaw cycle, that there'd be frozen ice right at the edge, and then it would thaw during the day and then freeze again. But also because it was a reservoir and there's constantly a water source coming in, the water kind of flows. There's a rhythm to the water, which I found was an issue when I put one of my tripod legs on ice and found out that it was moving with the level of the water and changing my composition. So I had to be careful when I was doing it and just try to do it really fast before, like I could see the water would go out and like, okay, do it right now before it all comes back in. But these are just, what happens is the ice comes and it just kind of it bumps into one another at the edge and it buckles up. And then if it starts to melt, you get some really nice soft edges. And so those are what all four images on the outer edges of this screen are. And then in the middle, B and E, B, I already mentioned about Lake Hayaha, and you can see that the ice that piece of sculpture is sitting on is the same ice that I had photographed earlier. But the same thing was happening at this lake, but the ice was so crystal clear, and it wasn't hitting up against the edge, but there was big boulders in the lake, and the ice would buckle up against those boulders, and eventually it would break off and then just scatter these crystalline pieces of ice across the top of the ice. And that's what I decided to take a picture of. And then in E, that is at the frozen waterfall. That's one of those chunks that was knocked off, and I can tell because it's so smooth that it had been sitting on piles of pine needles for a number of days and melting to create this really interesting shape. But it had all these iridescent colors in it, which I thought were fascinating. So I love looking for ice like this. And I would say, I'm trying to think how big. So that E was probably 6 inches wide. It was a pretty big chunk of ice. B was probably, this would fit in my palm. And then these other ones are probably all less than 3 inches wide.
Interesting.
So I'm taking those with a macro. Speaking of how I'm taking those, here's my trick. So I know everybody says you're not supposed to use a center column in your tripod. But if you don't feel like lying down in mud or frozen mud or whatever it is, I turn it upside down, and my camera is literally hanging upside down. I had an iPad, so you can see in picture A, I had an iPad that I was using at the time with a Cam Ranger, and that was allowing me to do focus stacking with my DSLR. Now that I have a mirrorless, I think it would be a little bit easier because I have focus stacking built into the capabilities of the camera and an articulating screen. But that is how I get the camera so close to the ground, because even if I didn't have a center column, and had all the legs splayed out, you still have the height of the ball head or whatever it is that you're using. And that puts it up too high to get the view that I'm looking for. Also, make sure you extend the smallest leg, the lowest leg of your tripod first, because you don't want to get water in the joints of your tripod. Let's see, what other notes do I have here? Yes, look for lighting to help separate the sculpture from the background. So that's what I have the images on the bottom. You can see that D is just completely flat light. So that was before the sun had come up and was hitting any of the landscape at all. And E is that same exact composition, but the sun had started hitting the hillside in the background. So in picture B, you can see that hillside that has some light on it. And so while the hillside itself was not in my composition, the ice itself was reflecting that light. And then again, I do like to color grade my ice photos to get the colors that I want, and that is in picture F. That's the fully processed image. And then I made this picture the full size of the screen just because I want to encourage you to get curious about details. So this was taken with a macro lens, and you may be able to tell that there was 2 levels of ice, and then this frost was forming between the 2 different levels, which was really fascinating. And you can see bubbles in the lower left, and you can see just shards of ice. I was fascinated looking at this, and this was all within a 3-inch. This is probably about 3 inches wide. So definitely close with my macro lens and focus stack to get everything in focus. But look for that kind of stuff. It's not something that's just gonna jump out at you and be super obvious. It's walking along the edge of the ice and looking for curiosities.
Unless you're by a waterfall with climbers and the ice jumps at you.
Yes, but then you're taking pictures of, oh, that's true. I see what you're saying. Yeah, but still, I mean, I wasn't looking at the waterfall. That was like behind me. I think I had put my camera bag down. I'm like, oh, what's this?
One thing that I found about this, Jeanie, and you may mention this, but these can be found even in rivers that you don't think are very pretty, little puddles, like things that you wouldn't think are very attractive for photographing. There's likely some of these hidden little gems. So don't poo-poo any little piece of water.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it could have one of these amazing little finds.
For sure. And in the middle of winter, you're more likely to find opportunities for ice sculptures along moving water, like in a river or a stream or something that's not completely frozen over. Because then you're going to have the water continually running. Whereas on a lake, a frozen alpine lake, you're not going to find that kind of thing. And now we move to lighting conditions.
All right, guys, I'm going to talk about light. There's different kinds of lighting. This doesn't only apply to winter, but we're going to focus on winter. So as photographers, we understand that light and composition are crucial elements to create an effective image, right? So properly utilizing both can help us convey the intended message through our photographs. Snow is highly reflective, so it can sometimes confuse the camera, and like the exposure settings are going to be all whacked. So because it's going to make it appear more blue or gray instead of its true white color. So to capture snow accurately, we need to adjust the camera settings accordingly. Remember that the camera doesn't see objects themselves. It sees different levels of light, so dark and gray and light. And it's up to us to manage the light to either highlight or obscure elements within our composition. When dealing with snow exposure, compensation is a valuable tool. You will find that camera's default settings often misinterpret snow as excessive brightness. So this will lead to underexposed images. So to correct this, use the exposure compensation button. That's the one that has like the plus and minus sign in your camera. So if you adjust it to +1, usually works pretty good. but feel free to experiment until you get like a satisfactory result. I also heard that you can do manual like settings with Kelvin. Like I think you can put it like to 7,000, and that might work well. But again, you're gonna have to experiment and see what works best for you. So while many photographers believe that the best light is during the hours of sunrise and sunset, um, limiting yourself to these times can be very restrictive. The middle of the day also offers excellent photographic opportunities, like you saw with the black and whites that Shanda was showing. And in winter, the sun is lower in the sky, even during the midday. So the sunsets and sunrises tend to be longer than those in the summer. So we all know that we cannot control light or weather. So learning to work with what we have makes for a better experience for us and those around us, because nobody likes a grumpy photographer, right? Like, so you just work with it, what you have, and then you're gonna be a happier person, and you're gonna be more creative because you're gonna push yourself to do something different. So next slide, Jeannie. So different lighting conditions produce different various effects. On this slide, these photos were taken during what we would call like a flat light or soft diffuse light. During the winter, light can be, it can often appear flat, particularly during overcast or foggy days. This type of lighting spreads evenly across the scene. I mean, you can see it in these two images. And it results in minimal shadows and a lack of depth or contrast. However, when you photograph distant trees and fogs, they can subtly blend into the background, creating like a sense of depth. To enhance your photos in these conditions, look for objects that contrast with the white snow. Here you see like Shanda used that pine cone that she carries in her pocket. Or, there's leaves, like the yellow leaves that fell from the tree, that creates like a contrast with the white snow.
Or leaves that Martha carries in her pocket.
I carry different colors, different leaves, and I lay them around. To enhance your photos in these conditions, look for objects that contrast the snow, like that. The snow also acts like a natural reflector, and while the clouds serve as a softbox, diffusing the light, you can create striking images by getting up close to small objects or subjects using your macro techniques. Also, an external flash can also add creativity to your shots. I've never used it, but I've seen it used, and it looks pretty cool. Foggy and misty weather is also effective at capturing dramatic landscapes, featuring like bare winter trees or creating a mysterious and dreamy atmosphere. One of our speakers, Michelle Sanz, she's like the queen of fog. So if you want to learn more of that, check out her website. So yeah, embrace these conditions and you can elevate your photography. Reflected light. Next one. So snow-covered ground acts as a massive natural reflector. It softens the harsh shadows, even in bright daylight. So this effect benefits not only like small scenes and wildlife photography, but also like larger landscapes. In the image here, you can see how the snow reflects onto the bird. So it diffuses like all the shadows or like high contrast. So it creates like a very pleasing image. And even tones. Same with the mountain scene here. Like it just creates like an even photograph. So yeah, use the reflected light as a kind of like as a like a giant reflector. All right, next slide, please. Front lighting. So this one's usually the least exciting option for lighting. It can become quite dynamic on partly cloud days. The clouds can cast interesting shadows that add depth and dimension to the landscape. So don't overlook the potential of stark shadows. They can enhance your compositions significantly. Also, if there's like stormy clouds behind, it can be pretty dynamic and pretty cool. So don't just walk away. Next one, backlighting. Okay, so I love backlighting. This technique involves sliding your subject from behind, which can create like very striking outlines around wildlife and other subjects. When you photograph animals, the backlighting can be really beautiful, emphasizing their shapes. And in landscape photography, backlighting can highlight subjects. Or if the sun is visible, you can create like a sun star. In these images here, you can see one of the three photos, the one on the to my right, on the right, is backlighting. While the middle image and the one on the no wait,
It's
the
what
one
you're
on
looking
the
at.
left and the one in the middle are highlight, and the one on the right is backlight. I think I've seen it backwards. So backlighting can yield captivating results, as is illustrated here, by the way it outlines the branches on the right image, and the long shadows created serve as a leading line to enhance the composition. The right image captures the sun illuminating like blowing snow around the tree. By exposing for the highlights, you can create a beautiful rim around your subjects. This technique is especially effective in wildlife photography, as it highlights the fur or the feathers of the animals, and it creates like stunning silhouettes depending on your camera settings. So it's pretty kind of fun to play around and figure out like your different lights and what kind of image you want to create.
And again, that would be on days that are like blue skies.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. Yeah.
So
Yep.
All right, next image, please. Sunrise and sunset. That's everybody's favorite, right? I love
except
that.
Jeannie's, apparently.
Yeah, exactly. Well, when Jeannie hits the alarm and doesn't get up, like, she misses the sunrise. Then she goes to bed early and misses the sunset. So when the sun is low on the horizon, the light becomes softer and warmer. It's a phenomenon called sweet light or golden hour, and this type of lighting enhances everything it touches, making it like a favorite among photographers and pretty much anybody. In this first image, you can see that the beautiful soft pink hues of sunrise, when accompanied by the enchanting glow called alpenglow, like Shanda mentioned. When the sun is low in the sky, it also casts like long shadows, which can significantly enhance your compositions by creating leading lines. The longest shadows typically occur during sunrise or sunset, when the sun is like lowest in the horizon. The image on the right is during sunset, and you can see like the kind of glow, golden glow, illuminating the mountains. That's like Shanda's image. And lastly, I don't have an image for this, but don't overlook the magic of the blue hour. Just like in any other seasons, blue hour during winter creates like a soft, ethereal blue light that transforms winter landscape into something really enchanting. It's really cold though during blue hours though, but it's worth it. It's always like freezing cold. And I also have
You're
not.
selling it really well, Martha.
Yeah, like
That's why she's going to talk about the clothing in a little bit.
you're gonna look like a Michelin person, but it's worth it. I also have not tried like external light sources, which can add special effects such as illuminating falling snowflakes. I know there was a post by Victoria Hack, which is also another one of our amazing speakers for the conference. She explained during one of her posts like how she created an image, and it was in winter, and it's using a flashlight or a flash. It looked really, really beautiful. So experiment and check her post to see how she did it. Next, please. Winter storms. That's our favorite. So when you photograph in winter storm, it can be like exhilarating challenge.
Yes, exhilarating. I would call it that. Just like
Exactly.
windstorm in sand dunes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
except we didn't have any goggles to protect our eyes. So in these conditions, manual focusing is often more reliable than autofocus, the autofocus will struggle to lock into the subject with the falling snow. The camera is going to be super confused. So if your camera seems to be malfunctioning, it's likely that it's having a difficult time focusing. If you have focus peaking on your camera, use that because that seems to kind of help. It can show you where the focus is on the image, so that may help you take sharper images. So to effectively freeze the motion of the snow, use a fast shutter speed. Experiment with different settings to determine what works best for your specific situation. Um, Also, if you have two camera bodies, bring them along with different lenses already attached. Consider perhaps, I don't know, like a macro lens and a zoom lens, if that's, the photography that you want to do. Because switching lenses during snowy or stormy conditions can be very challenging, as snow will easily get into your gear. So for sharp images, use a smaller aperture to increase depth of field and raise your ISO to maintain proper exposure. Additionally, a lens hood can help prevent snowflakes from getting into your lens, depending on the wind direction. Um, and finally, remember to zip up your camera, your camera bag. Yeah, because snow can
Yeah.
easily and quickly accumulate into the bag if you leave it unzipped. I did that when we were in Rocky Mountain, and that was not fun. I put the flap down, but I didn't zip it, so the snow just kind of like packed into my bag. So definitely don't forget. Actually, Jeannie, can you go to the next
Yeah.
slide? So on this slide, we can see, like Jeannie provided this too, like when you can see like one of them, the camera focused on the falling snowflakes, and the other one she was able to capture the RAM into focus. So it's just playing with your focusing that will allow you to get this. Yeah, autofocus doesn't work.
Autofocus will make you feel like your camera's broken.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
You're going to be
We've all tried
frustrated
that.
if you do that.
Or your lens.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing to be on a tripod and taking a picture of a tree and falling snow, but yeah, it's a lot tougher when your subject is moving, like in wildlife. But that's so fun to take pictures of the wildlife in snow when
Yeah,
it's
wildlife
actively
is
snowing.
usually not very considerate, so during the winter storm, it's even less considerate. So, yeah. And I think that's it for me.
Okay.
The light.
Speaking of wildlife, we're going to talk about mammals and birds because I have pictures of both. So mammals, large and small. The best the best animals really to take pictures of are the ones that you have easy access to. So for me and for Martha, we both have fox in our area. And so picture A, I remember it was snowing and it was super foggy. I think it had snowed overnight. I was at the kitchen sink and I look out the window and this fox was just sitting there on the rocks. And I ran and grabbed my camera and took a picture. And normally, if I didn't have the fog and the snow creating that sense of depth, this would not be a good photo because it's just like brown hillside behind it all the way. That's all you would see. But because of the snow, it becomes a very minimalist image. And I just love it. It was really exciting to see it sitting out there. And Martha, your fox.
Oh my God, my fox is so inconsiderate. I have cameras in the backyard trying to learn the patterns of the fox and see when it comes and when it goes, but it never follows a schedule. So I've sat there for hours waiting. This time, I just got lucky because it's also winter, so I was cold. But yeah, I caught it right there. Like you can see, like the snow is acting as a reflector too, and there was like sun.
Side lighting.
So yeah, it was illuminated by by the sun
Yeah.
and the snow. But yeah, I cooperated for this time.
That the lighting is just gorgeous in that one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then buffalo, those are much larger. Those do not have easy access to. I have to travel for those. And Martha's photo B on the top was in, where was that
Teton.
again?
Yeah, Teton.
Tetons. Okay.
Mhm.
And photo E was taken at Rocky Mountain Arsenal, which is outside of Denver and open all year, but there is a herd of buffalo there, and so you can get some really interesting photos. But I have yet to go to like Yellowstone in the winter and gotten like a close up of a buffalo with snow all over the front of it.
Group trip.
Yeah. And then picture C and F, those are actually a black-footed ferret, and I was lucky enough, it was the same day that I took the picture of the buffalo at Rocky Mountain Arsenal. They released black-footed ferrets there, which are highly endangered, and there's actually a black-footed ferret breeding facility north of Fort Collins. And this particular, there was more than one ferret, but these particular ferrets were coming from a breeding location in Canada, and they had gotten stuck in customs, and so they were releasing them normally they would release them in the summer. And so this was just a fluke, and there happened to be snow on the ground. And normally they would completely blend in with a brown landscape, but because it was white, it was really special to be able to watch them.
They didn't have their passport.
Apparently not. And some other large mammals. So again, some of these animals I have easy access to. I live in an area where there's a ton of mule deer, and those are the two animals on the left. The picture D, the deer was actually looking in my window, and I took a picture of it through the window. And but you can see it is covered with snow on its head, because when it snows, they're always digging underneath the snow to find food. And so you can get some, if you have animals around, you can watch them in winter and look for different behaviors, because they definitely have different behaviors. And then picture A, if you look closely in the top of this photo, there's a little bit of steam. So this deer had slept under our deck all night and was covered with snow and frost. And as soon as the sun hit the fur, the snow started to melt, and you could just see it steaming off of it. I thought that was really interesting. Bighorn sheep. Again, the picture E on the bottom there, there's no snow in that photo, but there is willows, which is creating a really nice glow. And then that sun in the upper right corner created a really warm glow over the whole photo. And in Rocky Mountain National Park, and actually down in the Loveland area, like all the way down the canyon, there will be elk that you'll see. They stay up in the park mostly in the fall, but then in the winter they come down into the plains where it's a little bit warmer, and I think also less snow, so there's more food for them. But I was up there one time when it was snowing, and this elk was just eating the tree, the branches on the tree, but there was snow on it. And every time it took a bite, it just got a shower of snow all over it. And it was really fun to watch that. And the young bucks are always fighting with one another, so there's always time for action. And I would encourage you to look for action shots. I mean, certainly portraits are lovely, but I like to look for something that's a little bit different.
So Jeanie and Martha,
yeah.
Oh, did either of you have to have specific wildlife lenses, or were you able to use your telephoto that you have in your kit?
I would say mine is not a kit lens. I have a 100 to 500.
Well, I mean kit as in what you normally carry, like your range of.
Well, yes,
I wildlife lens.
Right, my 100 to 500, I use it as much for landscapes as I do for wildlife. I love that focal length, that range of focal length. So it's not special for wildlife.
And I use my 100 to 400, but again, like Jeanie, I use it for landscapes and I use it for wildlife. Because you want to give animals the distance, right? You don't want to get into their space.
Absolutely.
So,
but you don't have to actually have an expensive wildlife lens in order to be able to attain these photos.
No,
Nope.
Not at all.
Perfect.
I was gonna say that the ram in the middle, he looks like he's in a like a supermodel. Like, look at this man.
Doesn't he? I know.
The light
Just
is like
strutting down the road.
modeling. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Show
So
off.
that's Waterton Canyon. If
Yeah.
you come out for the conference, Waterton Canyon is to the west of Denver. It's and there's a herd of bighorn sheep in there. It's really cool.
Mhm.
Birds. Again, I love birds in the snow, and you can get some really interesting images with them, with their wings out. It's challenging. I can't tell you how many, probably hundreds of photos I took for these ones that I'm showing you here. So don't get discouraged. I would say that in the picture letter C, that's a juvenile eagle, and that's not snow, that's just a really gray, cloudy day. And so when I'm taking pictures of birds against a cloudy sky, I just blow it out. I do not worry about highlights blinking because I know I'm going to make it white anyway. I personally love that high key look. It was a little bit more challenging to focus on the raven in picture D because it was actively snowing. And then E are sandhill cranes. So this was actually a spring shot, but there was a late spring snow. And you can again see how that snow is acting as a big reflector underneath the birds.
So pretty.
This is one of the things I love about bird behavior in the winter when we have a super cold morning and I can take all these pictures from the warmth of my house. So we do have a bird feeder, but all of these were, well, except for the poor little hummingbird in E. Yes, that is a hummingbird, but it had already come in. We don't have them over winter, and we had a super cold spring snow, and you can tell that it got really puffy. And so this puffiness that they create is piloerection, PTILO erection. And it is a way that the birds keep themselves warm. They're like the OGs of down, right? That is what it is. And it just puffs out. It keeps their body heat in. And you can see the Seller's jay in picture A. That is, I don't know if that's snow or frost or both, but they roost overnight. They're not really moving. And so they do accumulate frost on their feathers. And I have seen their feathers also, when the sun hits it, most of the time they kind of shake it off because they have to in order to fly, but they are puffed up enough that they still stay warm, even though they have frost on the outside. And the other thing that you'll notice is that a lot of the birds just stand on one foot, and the other foot they kind of tuck up underneath into their fur. And that way, because obviously they don't have feathers on their feet, but they only lose half the amount of heat that they would if they'd had both feet down. So they kind of switch feet, and they're only standing on one foot. And another fun bird behavior to watch is watching them find food. So I have a few trees in my yard that have berries on them. Some are red, and those are always fun. So if this is something you're interested in, you can think about planting trees in your yard that produce berries that wildlife will eat throughout the year. And the red berries, of course, create a really nice, colorful pop. The white berries in A and B aren't as colorful, but the birds are very colorful, and they get into some really interesting positions trying to get the berries because they're usually like hanging down and not on the branches that are going to carry the weight of the bird. So it's just fun to watch their antics.
Fascinating. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So how do we stay warm when it's cold?
You guys are ready for a winter fashion show? So you're ready.
Don't you wish?
Hold on. Okay. So on this list, you're going to see, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the list here is like wool socks, wool long underwear, wool hoodie, puffy vest, puffy sweater or jacket, like those Patagonia things that are like just really thin, but they can trap the air, snow pants, snow jacket, glove liners, hand warmers, mittens, neck gaiter, mittens again, the beanies, snow boots, micro spikes, and hiking poles. So, all right. So I guess I don't know. You can go to the next slide, or you can keep it on this one. Um, so, winter photography can be very challenging on its own, but especially when it comes to dealing with cold temperatures and unpredictable weather. Um, there's an old saying, I think we said it before, we're going to say it again, but there's like no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing. So to fully immerse yourself in the creative process, it's essential that you dress appropriately so you can focus on your photography than on your discomfort. So dress in layers, as your body temperature will fluctuate depending on your activity level. If you're hiking, you're going to be sweating, so you're going to want to take some layers off. And when you're staying put and taking photos, you're going to get cold. So layering is crucial for maintaining warmth. Wool is an excellent choice, and that's why I kind of listed everything is wool, because it wicks the moisture away, it keeps you dry, and it traps the air to insulate against the cold. And wool can also keep you warm even when it gets wet. So you want a base layer that is close to your skin and wicks away any moisture. On this slide, you can see like the socks, the underwear, the long underwear. Those are all wool. So that's kind of like the first layer. So then you're gonna want a mid layer. So you can see like the purple hoodie is like number 1, and then like the white vest, or obviously you don't wear it all, right? But like you can kind of mix and match, and the sweater, like that silvery dirty jacket. So the mid layer adds insulation to your body, like so, kind of trapping the air, and the outer layer blocks the wind and repels the water. That way, you can have the ability to mix and match depending on the changing weather and the conditions. It's always better to have multiple thin layers than a bulky single layer. So yeah, so you can see the pants and the jacket. Those are like they're just shells, but they will repel water and wind. So they're gonna kind of keep you dry. So with the right gear, you can enjoy photographing in winter without being like hindered by the chill. Glove liners, you can see they're black, are essential, and if they're touch screen compatible, those are a good idea, because you can, you know, get your hands out and then still work on your camera. Or you can do like I do. I have like some that you can pull the finger out, or some that actually have holes, so I can just kind of poke my finger out and work on my camera. And then you have your mittens, and toe warmers and hand warmers are a really good idea. Like you can put the hand warmers in your mittens, so when your hands are out, they get cold, you can put them back in and you can warm up. I don't use the toe warmers, but I think Jeannie, you do.
Yeah,
Do.
And
I
then
was just gonna say that's probably out of all that gear, that's the one I use the most, are the hand warmers and the toe warmers for sure. They're game changers.
yeah, and you can
They,
throw them in your pockets too, because like you can put your hands in different way, like it just kind of keeps you warm. I mean, I think Jeannie, you have like another vest that you wear, right?
oh yeah, I get a little high tech. I have a heated vest, and I don't have it on when I'm actively hiking, but usually when I stop and it gets cold, like if you're at an alpine lake, it's almost always super windy, and then I turn it on. It just adds a little bit more heat to my torso.
Hmm.
But you can also buy larger versions of hand warmers that are called body warmers, and they have adhesive. Then you can like put it right on your base layer, and
Yeah.
it's kind of the same thing, but it's harder to turn it on and off.
And the micro spikes, you can see them there, like right below the neck gaiter and the mittens. Those are essential. The ones that I have are Catulas. So those are your best friends when you're walking, because you don't want to slip on the ice or the snow. Although sometimes they kind of get caught into each other, and I trip with my face down in the snow, so you got to be careful with that. And the boots, those have like they're waterproof, and they have like a lining, like what do you call that? Uh, the the whatever the sheep have.
It's like a thin solid or a wool.
Yeah, so
depending on
they
what they're
keep
made
your
of.
feet
Mhm,
warm.
mhm,
But yeah,
mhm.
and hiking poles.
Mhm. I will add with the micro spikes as far as photography goes. One note really important to remember is when you are out on ice or an icy lake, you want to be very careful where you walk with those spikes because you might be walking into a composition that you wish you would have been able to get. So you've got to be very conscious of where you walk with those micro spikes when you're out photographing on ice lakes for sure.
Oh, you know what? I should have added a broom to this list because so you can sweep the snow from
That
the
that's
lake.
photography gear, isn't it?
Right.
Uh, but yeah,
Mm.
so I mean, it's kind of scary, like kind of freaky when you walk into the frozen lake and like you hear the ice cracking. It's kind of
Yeah, kinda.
A little bit.
but like if it's thick enough, you're fine.
Mhm.
Yeah, you might want to. I talk a little bit about ice and safety, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of videos for ice fishermen, ice fisher people, on YouTube, and they talk a lot about how to identify safe ice, and it's worth looking at, I
Mhm.
think.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Okay. So photography gear, some of the things that I'll discuss today are very important while the others are just recommended. So you don't have to go out and purchase all these items and all this gear if you don't already have it. Just take note of some of them, add them to your list for like your future purchases. But it just makes everything easier when photographing in winter. And it's a wonderful way to keep you out there photographing so that you can continue to add to your personal photography portfolio. Just so you know, cameras, with a few exceptions, function without problems down to 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and many will claim functionality down to 14 degrees Fahrenheit. With, if anything, you might get signs of sluggishness as some of the temperature drops, but most of them will handle relatively cold temperatures. So just to add that note in there. In here, you'll see a lens cloth and a blower. Keep extra batteries. So you always want to have several extra batteries, but the tip for that is to keep them next to you. So I put them in inside pockets. Sometimes it makes it a little bit more complicated to get to them, but they are very affected by the cold temperatures, more so than your camera and some of your other gear. So you want to keep them close to you so that they don't lose, so they don't die quickly. And this also goes for your cell phone as well. Your cell phone battery will also deplete pretty quickly, and it is advisable to keep it on one of your inside layers, or next to your body as well. A lens hood. So different from rain and snow, different from rain, snow often falls in smaller pieces. I mean, it could be larger pieces depending on, the weather and the snow blowing, but they a lot of times will fall lightly, and you will be able to use a lens hood to make your outing last a lot longer. This is about the only time I use a lens hood because I think they're kind of bulky and goofy. But if there's any condition that I ever will use a lens hood, it will certainly be in winter conditions. Um, it's one of the simplest ways, yet most effective accessories that you can have, and I think most lenses come with them, if not all. At least for my Nikon series, they come with them.
Mhm.
Filters, so polarizer, graduated filters. Martha talked a little bit about the lighting and exposure compensation, and filters is one way also that you can kind of help battle that, or use them to make something that you would like to see or prefer to see. A good camera bag. Expect to have your bag laying down on the ice or in the snow, unless you're going to have it on your back all the time, which can be complicated. So if you don't have a bag it doesn't have to necessarily be waterproof, but at least water resistant. And if it isn't, you can just stick a trash bag or plastic in there of some sort, lay that down and put your bag on top of it. And that'll help protect your bag.
Mhm.
A really good tripod, one with or without a center column. The one here pictured that I have has a center column that's removable. I've been out there photographing as at Rocky Mountain National Park, as a matter of fact, without it, and it's perfect, or with a tripod that has it and you couldn't remove it. So you can still make it work, but it's easier for you to get really low to those really small icings if you have a tripod that doesn't have that center column on it. Tripod leg warmer, some come with it, not all. So this particular tripod did not come with it. So I was able to buy some, and they came in a 3-pack. So it basically just Velcros onto one of your legs. You don't need it on all 3 legs, just one, because carrying that cold tripod is one of the ways that my hands get coldest the quickest. And so if you have just that one little spongy thing to hold on to, it really helps when you're just carrying your tripod from location to location, or without having to pack up everything. It's really handy to have. And if you buy 3, you can give them to friends. You can share, give them to other photography friends.
Thanks, Shanda.
I know Martha mentioned this, but I'm going to mention gloves again because I wear different gloves when I photograph than I do when I'm out in winter expeditions and skiing and various different other activities. The ones that I have in the picture here are just a small kind of liner glove, but they do flip over. So it has a cover, and then it flips back and exposes your fingers so that you can actually use your camera and make various different adjustments. Just recently, I found a company called Vallerret. So I think Jeffrey asked in the questions, a recommended one. I just found this company, Vallerret. It's a small company that was recently founded. I heard a podcast on Bree's Wild Women in Photography, and I just got a pair today, and I wanted to show you these really quick. I got the ones that were built for heavier duty winters, so the thick winters, which is what I love to photograph in. But these come with a specific ability to move your finger and then put it back, and also with your thumb. So you can use your thumb and or forefinger and put them both back, and they're pretty well made. So I'm anxious to get out and give these a try. I just wanted to mention it again because I think it's one of the most important things that will allow you to stay out there and photograph. Because for me, my feet and my hands will freeze before anything else, and that's the one reason that will take me back to my car or whatever, and keep me from staying out there like I would like to. Okay, let's see. Filters. Oh, finally, camera protection. So I don't always use this, but I at least have it in my bag. There's 2 different ones that are shown here. One is a more rigid plastic case that you can just slip over your camera and your lens, and it allows you to put your hands in and operate your camera, and it has a clear window so that you can see what you're doing, see the settings. And then the other one is just a plastic. Sometimes they come in little packages, and again, you can share them with friends or whatever, but it's a Movo. And I always carry one in my camera bag because I can pull it out if it's raining or snowing or wind, sand, variety of different conditions. So for me, not just winter, it always is in my bag, no matter where I go, just in case I want to pull it out and help protect my camera and my lens. And last thing to note is in winter conditions, you must be very conscious about bringing your camera equipment in and out of the weather. So when you decide that you're done photographing for the day, it's important that you make sure that you get off as much of the snow and or ice that sometimes develops on your lens and your camera before you put it in your bag. And then put it in your bag. And when you get back to where it is you're lodging or indoors, you want to keep it there. You don't want to pull it out of your bag and take it inside. You just want to keep it in your bag probably several hours. Keep it overnight, but several hours will work. If you're not sure if the bag has warmed up enough, you can stick your hand in a side pocket or somewhere to kind of get feel how warm or how cold it may still be. And that's because of condensation. So when you're coming in from cold temperatures into a warm environment, you will build up condensation on both your lens and your camera. And then sometimes it causes a film or a residue that's really complicated to get off. And if you get this on the inside of your camera or the inside of your lens, then it can be really problematic. So if you decide that you might want to go back to your lodging or whatever it is and look at your photos right away, I recommend pulling your SD card out of your camera, put your camera in your bag, close it up so that when you get back to lodging, your camera can stay in its bag while you are reviewing your images. And that's it.
All
So
right.
smart.
Okay, I'll try to get through this stuff quickly. But one thing about winter photography is that safety is really important because hypothermia is a real concern. I'm not going to go through all the symptoms. You can look those up, and that'll be the next slide anyway. But the first thing you want to do before you even head out is to check the weather at all elevations. And you can see this picture of the three of us here in Rocky. This was at the Bear Lake Trailhead. When we entered the park, there was no snow on the ground. It was brown. It was clear, pretty much clear skies. I mean, and then we get up to 9,600 feet at Bear Lake, and it was sideways blowing snow. And you can see how we were having trouble even keeping our hats on. So I can't say we got any awesome photos, but it was exhilarating. Yes.
We had awesome laughs.
We had awesome laughs. We did. But you can use the click on map forecast for the National Weather Service to get, and then look at hourlies. And also the Windy app also has a point spot location that you can get weather for. So look at the different elevations because it will be very different. Mm-hmm. And also know where you're going. If you're in a national park, highly unlikely that you're going to have cell service. And because batteries deplete much faster in cold weather, you want to keep your GPS device or your phone in an inside pocket. I have like an outside pocket for easy access. Sometimes when I'm hiking with friends, I only bring my phone, but I have had it like just tank in battery. And then, we get, and I have nothing left. And then we get into town after the hike and I'm in a warm restaurant and all of a sudden I have 70% on my battery. So it was just the cold. So if you keep it on an inside pocket, you're going to have a lot longer battery life. I recommend carrying a map and a compass for backup and knowing how to use those things, especially if you're going to be going off trail somewhere. Mm-hmm. That said, and even if you're on trail, other people's tracks can lead you astray. I've had this, not by myself, but I've gone out with a group of friends and all of a sudden we found ourselves hiking up this drainage and we're like, gosh, this doesn't look like anything we remember. And all of a sudden we come up and there's a bridge and we're like, oh, we're supposed to be up there, which we could get up to, luckily, but we had just followed other people's tracks and they were not correct. And we could see it. We could see it with all trails. We knew where we were and where we wanted to be, and we weren't too worried because we weren't that far from the cars and everything. But just know that it can happen. And then the other thing to know is that there's different trails, or I shouldn't say different trails. Some trails are not accessible in the winter. And so Rocky Mountain National Park offers both summer trail maps and winter trail maps. And the winter trail maps will show you where avalanche zones are. And it's important to know where those are. I am not well versed in avalanche safety, and so I stay away from avalanche zones. But it's always good to know that. And this particular map, I highlighted the avalanche warning signs in red. They're actually not in red on the actual map, but I wanted you to be able to see that they actually are on the map. And let your friends and family know where you're going when you plan to return. And consider the water container. So in the summer, I like to hike with a water bladder with a hose. I just find that I drink more water and it's a lot easier to drink the water that way. But I have been out with it in the winter and have had that hose freeze, and then it's completely useless. There are covers that you can get to put over them, like neoprene covers. I have seen conflicting reviews, and I have never tried it myself. So typically, I keep a bottle of water at least inside my pack where it's not going to freeze for the amount of time that I'm hiking during the day. We already talked about clothing and stuff, but just know cotton kills. That's a real thing because when it gets wet, it basically clings to your body and it doesn't wick moisture. And that's the thing that is going to make you the coldest, I think. So dress in layers. You will get warm as you're hiking, and then you get up to your place where you want to take a photo, and it's freezing cold. And so you want to have extra layers that you can put on, have a windbreaker or something. Even like I have a rain jacket for summer, but I bring it with me in the winter because I can put it on over all my other layers, and it acts as a wind block, and it also reflects body heat back in. And then know the signs of hypothermia. Shivering that cannot be controlled is a bad sign, but as it gets worse, the shivering stops. So just be aware of that in case you're out with others. If you are by yourself, it's highly likely you won't notice that you're getting worse. It's other people that will notice it before you do. Carry a first aid kit, and in particular, carry an emergency bivy. So you can see how big that is against my hand. It's a really small thing, but it's reflective. And so again, it's something that reflects your body heat back onto you. When you are driving in the park, obviously this will be difficult if you are renting a car, but in the winter, I always carry a small snow shovel and chains in the car because I never know where I'm going to be. I have helped dig someone out of a drift that they drove into in the park. Just because the road is open doesn't mean there's not going to be drifts across it, so be smart. If you see a bunch of snow and you don't think you have snow tires, or you just have a passenger car, think twice before driving into a snow drift because you might get stuck. And then ice. Thinking about ice thickness, ice needs to be at least 4 inches thick to walk on it. I am not an ice expert. I just went to Google. That 4 inches is clear ice, and that is the strongest ice. But if it's white or gray ice, it's only 50% as strong. So you're going to need like 8 inches of ice if it's white or gray, which will be very difficult to know unless you're actually digging a hole. And that's why I say I guess you would pick a hole into the ice and see how thick it is. Be very wary during shoulder season. In February, when our conference is, that won't be an issue at all, and you can pretty much trust the ice on the lakes in Rocky Mountain National Park. But if there is an inlet or an outlet where there's running water or ice is over streams, don't trust that because that ice will be much thinner, and it will not be consistently thick, and that could be an issue too. Okay. Almost at the end.
Almost. Okay. With all of that wonderful advice and recommendations that we just gave today about winter photography, it just makes a perfect segue right into our Women's Winter Photography Conference. And as you can see, we are very passionate about winter photography. We absolutely love it. And we chose Rocky Mountain National Park for this conference because it is a beautiful location and there are all of these options for photography there. We are super excited that we have a fantastic lineup of speakers. We've got 10 of them here to showcase. Our conference is going to be in February from the 6th through the 9th in 2025. And we are currently offering a discount from this webinar. It's called Winter 100. And so it's easy to sign up at Outdoor Photo Alliance. If you don't know the website, it's www.outdoorphotoalliance.com. And you can just Google Outdoor Photo Alliance and we are there. You will find us very easily. I will add that one of the reasons that we think this is such a fantastic thing to not only do photography, but to connect, which is something that's very valuable to us, because Martha and I actually met at a conference. And so that kind of started some of this whole relationship that we actually love, this feeling of community that we want to provide the opportunities for other people. So Martha and I met, I think we said 3 or 4 words to each other because we were both nervous. And we actually met Bree Stockwell there as well. And then through her connections and relationships and other people, we all went to White Sands. 6 of us went to White Sands one week, and there's more stories about that. But basically, yeah. Right. And that's how we met Jeanie. And so that's how our relationship has developed. And that's what we want to share with other people, give the opportunity to develop that community, find those other photographers with that passion that we have. And this is a perfect place to find that. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then lastly, This is a lot of our contact information listed here. We're the Outdoor Photo Alliance, of course, our discount code, each of our individual websites, and you can find us on our actual Outdoor Photo Alliance website if you want to find out more about us, your speakers and hosts today, and more information about the conference and many of the things that we have going on. We have a lot of things other than just this conference going on. And then today, as a matter of fact, Matt Payne released our podcast. So it is officially out there for anybody and everybody. If you want to go take a listen, talks a little bit more about the Outdoor Photo Alliance and how we came about and what we're about. So that is live today. So thank you for joining us and thank you for being here.
Yeah, check out Matt's podcast and support him on his Patreon.
His Patreon.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And with that, are we ready to open it up for questions?
Yeah. If we have any additional questions, I know there have been some that we've answered.
We've been trying to answer through the whole time.
As it's been going. Okay, and you can ask us questions about anything, whether it's
almost anything,
different types of almost anything. Jeanie has limits. No kidding. Whether it's winter photography in general, the conference, Rocky Mountain National Park, any of those questions, be sure to ask us. And we'll
we do have
limits.
That's not what I was going to say. I was going to say, don't we have a download? Martha?
We do have a free download that's on our main. Yep, it's actually
created a download for like a guide to shoot in Rocky Mountain.
Yep, and it's free.
Yeah, it's been going to subscribers. I can't remember if we put it on the website or not.
We did. Yep. So with subscribers, and it went to the link right on the website. It's click on the Women's Winter Conference, and when you go down to like shooting locations and recommendations, the location, there's a free download button. Just
I put instructions or directions on how to find the ice climbing waterfall in Wild Basin. So if you would like to visit there, the instructions are in there. Just be aware that there are ice climbers, and it's kind of their territory. So work around them. Don't get in their way.
So Jeffrey says, great stuff. Valerie says, such great webinar. Thank you. Nancy
Thanks.
says, awesome podcast. Great information. Pamela says, really great webinar. Thank you. So everybody likes it. Darcy says, what is the name of the new gloves? Vallerret, I think I typed it there. I could type it again.
I just typed it in to ansser the question.
Is there a particular brand? Or a particular model, I guess?
So they actually have several. It's pretty fascinating. I've been looking on their website quite a bit, and they actually it shows like a display of different types of gloves. So depending on what you think you're going to get out in, it'll say for mild winters, maybe you try this. More extreme, like Arctic type situations, try this. And then there's a size guide out there. We can drop a link below for you guys if you like, just to make it really easy to find them.
The ones that I have and that were on the photo were ibex. They were like all wool, and then I have mittens over that. But but yeah. So
and I use liners that are I ordered them from New Zealand. They're possum wool, and so it's 40% possum, which is supposed to be have like an even greater ability to hold in heat than wool, and then it's mixed with wool and I think a little bit of silk as well. The only thing I don't like about them is that they're not touch compatible. So I just at the end of last season bought some that don't have any fingertips, and then I have again mittens to put over them, and my mittens have pockets for hand warmers in them. So that's my new thing to try this winter. I can't guarantee that it's gonna work because I haven't tried it yet. So stay tuned.
And leather also makes a difference. So if you have some leather outside, I know not all of them are leather, but if you have leather outside the gloves, it also helps with moisture inside your gloves, as well as keep the moisture out from penetrating the gloves as well. So yeah.
All right.
Okay, if you have an opossum, just cover his ears. You're gonna freak out.
Somebody had visited New Zealand and said, and had come back, bought the gloves while she was there and came back. Just, you have to get some. These are amazing. And I do love them. And they keep my hands warm when I have them on. But like I said, they're not touch compatible. So then I have to take them off, and then my hands get cold. And yeah.
Yeah. And then sometimes your hands get wet and you can't get them back into your gloves.
I have a pair of, they're like fingerless and like a thumbless.
Mm-hmm.
They're made out of wool. Somebody made them. They shrunk sweaters and made
Oh,
like
wow.
wool sweaters, and they made it so they're super warm. So
Yeah,
those
they would be super warm.
work really good because your fingers are exposed and your thumb is exposed. So
Yeah.
you get out of the mittens, do your thing, and then put it back in the mittens.
Yeah.
So those are really good.
And the mittens that I have, they'll flip back on the hand and flip back on the thumb. So I shouldn't have to take my hand out.
Yeah.
This is all in theory.
Right. Well, my smaller liner types that have that same option are my favorite.
Yeah.
I love them. They're just not quite warm enough for those
Yeah.
really wintry days. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay. All right, everybody.
Musk ox?
Musk ox.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
Different here.
Interesting.
Huh.
But if it works.
Right.
I haven't heard of that one. So
I haven't either.
Nope, me neither.
Cool.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
It's been great seeing you.
Yeah, thanks for joining.
Take care.
This is going to be on YouTube.
Yeah, you'll find it on YouTube, and we'll have links below, but give us a day or two to catch our breath.
And it'll be in our blog on our website too.
Yes.
So if anybody missed out, or if you have friends or anybody that would like to watch it, you can find it on our blog. So at the Outdoor Photo Alliance, just click blog and you'll find it in there as well.
Great.
Yay.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.